It's why Tottenham are going to have an incredible season, I think, this year. Pape Sarr and Richarlison are making parallel moves this way. Why are they doing that? You know, this glass is very much like this week's episode of The Fallout. It's full to the brim. Welcome back. Let me know in the comments down below. Pause the video right now. Do I need a wee before the end of this filming? I'll let you know at the end of this video. You lucky things. So as I said, the weaknesses are starting to get exposed, but which teams need to panic? We're going to tell you who needs to hit the panic button tonight and who will be fine. Arsenal 2, Fulham 2. The XG was 3.25 to Arsenal, 0.53. I think the thing to talk about here is Arsenal's growing pains and sort of explain them for you. So what is the biggest problem at Arsenal right now? And is there one stat that reveals all? Obviously there is. That's why I set that up. Well, Arsenal conceded in the first minute to Fulham. Now, this means that they have now conceded in minute 1 in 3 of the last 9 Premier League matches. And even more telling is the opposition of which they were playing for these goals. You've got Bournemouth, Southampton, and now Fulham. All games and teams that they are expected to beat. So is there a complacency problem here at Arsenal? Let me know in the comments down below. But more importantly, is there more at play here? And what are the growing pains with this new Arteta system? Because one thing I've got to say is that the anger at the weekend I thought was interesting. You know, the goals were, it was an odd game for Arsenal, but they did control it. And this whole patience of trusting the process, Arteta has delivered that already to a point. Obviously not the trophies, or he's got one, right? But I don't know, it just felt like a lot. It felt like a little bit of an overreaction, I think, for a lot of it. But obviously Arteta has got this new system, and the important thing is who is struggling. I've seen a lot of hyperbole around Kai Havertz, but let's break it down to see if there is any truth behind it. I think something that tells us a lot about the problem with Kai Havertz, but also this Arsenal setup, are the heat maps of Trossard and Kai Havertz. So the first thing that you notice here is that Trossard and Kai Havertz are too similar in where they're picking up the ball and are somewhat on top of each other. You can see Kai Havertz and his positioning there, and his average position is pretty similar to it as well. But Trossard, as that central striker, is often getting kind of in his place. You know, that hot spot around number 29 there is, that's Havertz's area. Now, we've done a video on Kai Havertz and the rotation of him as a player. He will come over to that left-hand side as well, which you saw. But I think the growing pains here are the fluency of it and just kind of getting in each other's way. That was a word I used a lot in that video, the word fluent. And fluent means you're not thinking about it, you're just getting on with it. And that, I think, is one of the big problems with Arsenal right this moment. Now, this could be blamed on a few different things. Now, firstly, do the players understand the new approach? Are they fluent in that new approach? Or secondly, is Arteta to blame for making the system a little bit too complicated and making the positional play a little bit messy? So this screenshot shows exactly how this problem unfolded on the pitch. So here you have Trossard. Now, Trossard's actually playing as a central striker, so he really should be up here, looking to sort of stretch the play, trying to sort of to sort of make these guys think, okay, we need to move backwards, and actually just to generally create a lovely amount of space here, which there kind of is on the counter-attack. But imagine that was a different player with the ball. Having someone like Trossard exactly there or there would allow for a pass straight through, and you've taken 1, 2, 3 players out of the game. So Trossard drops deep, doesn't need to do this. But the problem is this team isn't in tune. And so what happens is Martinelli sees Trossard dropping deep. So he goes, oh, there's this space that I can go and attack. He goes centrally. He gets into that central position. That's okay, because especially with someone with his kind of pace, he might be able to get the ball, here, and then be able to drive and score one of his wonderful goals. And of course, you've got Saka over here. You can just about see him. He's going to go and support as well. But Trossard obviously needs to be able to play that pass or drag someone in and then play the little pass into him there. But because there's that split second for you to understand what's going on here, this team isn't in tune. And that's where you can probably have a go at Havertz, because Havertz isn't in tune with what's going on himself, and also because Trossard doesn't need to be dropping deep. Havertz actually finds himself here, and he wants to get over here. And if he could understand it all a little bit quicker, maybe he would already be there. He would see that, you know, survey the landscape and make his way there. But he's not there yet. And it's those split seconds that mean that you kind of get in the way. So what actually happens in this passage of play is Havertz, instead of running round, is actually doing the opposite. He's running in line of Trossard. And that just slows down the play for Arsenal, because Trossard can't now play that pass to Martinelli into this space to break those lines, because Havertz is across his path. So that's the problem when it comes to Arsenal. Previously, they were very, very structured, and actually, they do have a lot of dominance over games, and we saw that. And they're looking to work these triangles, and it's understandable. But when you have someone like Thomas Partey stepping in, that means someone like Ben White is kind of here instead of being out here like he was, and it used to be a bit of a triangle there, and Partey was sat there, and you have that one player who stands still. There are so many moving parts, you know, in terms of players that can take each other's roles. I think that's the big difference here. With Ben White previously stepping in for Partey, he didn't sort of get on his toes. And this season, these two, I think there is a slight problem where you are somewhat like crowbarring the two of them in. And again, you are slightly crowbarring the two of them in. It is so like meta, like it's next level football. So it's either too much or it's going to take time. I think this next level of control is that kind of final problem within this new Arsenal system. It's that they sort of have total control in terms of maintaining the ball, but the quality of chances, they just aren't as high as they were last season. And for example, if we have a look at the momentum bar, it shows that they had attacking momentum, but the bars themselves aren't as high as they need to be. This means that they had final third dominance, but they weren't actually creating many genuine goal-scoring opportunities for all the dominance that they had. And this stems from the system being a bit too convoluted, in my opinion, and all the central presence waters down the ability for them to have a higher tempo. When it comes to Fulham, I think they had a game plan, and I think they executed it really, really well. Marco Silva deserves a lot of credit for this, as he showed a lot of tactical intellect as a coach with this one. And with Palhinha in the side, I think Fulham have a side capable of being very frustrating for teams like Arsenal who want to dominate possession. He sat deep, he protected his back four, he made 5 tackles during the match, and then has that physicality to score from set pieces and punish teams. He's absolutely perfect for this Fulham side, and so important as we go into this final week of the transfer window. Man United 3, Nottingham Forest 2. Bit of a scare for Man United, and have Man United actually somehow found the cure? Maybe. Now, going 2-0 down inside 4 minutes isn't a good look for Man United, but they did find the answer to their problems in this match. But maybe they were just papering over the cracks. So firstly, you know, Antony's goal. I have no idea how Man United are being so soft for this goal. Also, the players who are back, for me, that's a huge issue here. I don't understand it. So we've got Antony, Marcus Rashford, and Eriksen. They're the 3 deepest players. None of them are in their own half or sort of waiting on the halfway line. Now, I know sometimes you allow those players to come back, but that cannot happen. Like, that's kind of arrogant, right? Surely this should be, and I know he's on his way back, that should be Aaron Wan-Bissaka. It should be Dalot in a corner scenario like that. The way that was allowed to happen, I think it certainly raises question marks, and it's something that I think we need to keep an eye on, because that problem might not go away. It'd be interesting to see if that changes now. I mean, maybe that's an English, British gammon mentality. I don't know. But surely you have defensive-minded players back for those moments. And there were a few defensive issues within this game. Sorry, I just hit puberty there. There were a few defensive issues within this game for Manchester United that I thought could have been punished against a better team. And I feel like one player in particular would address that. But we're going to tell you who that is in the One Transfer for Every Club video, which will be out on Wednesday. Actually, there's going to be 2. So there's going to be one based on the Narrative show, which is my brand new show, which has you guys starring in it. If you haven't seen that yet, make sure you search it. Make sure you get involved in the Discord server. Link's in the description. James, who's my editor, make sure you put the link in the description. So a fan from every Premier League club is going to put forward their dream signing before deadline day. And then Boring Allcott over here is going to put forward a sort of bit more realistic signing that you could actually sign before the deadline day. But it's good to dream, isn't it? More importantly, it's great to subscribe to this channel. Get on it. But anyway, Man United, right? What did they do well? well, there were a few players that I thought really ignited the Man United comeback, and it was their quality that won them this game, not the overall tactical system. So there's been a lot of criticism launched at Antony. And actually, I've done it myself as well. I think we've all got somewhat frustrated with the cutting in and looking to put that cross on because it does feel a little bit one-dimensional. And actually, I think when Højlund comes in, that will help with that a little bit. But I think he deserves credit in this game because he actually threatened the byline a lot more than he has done previously. And it's great to see because he's got so much talent. And that's the problem. You don't want to cut off the pitch. Look, if you make that run, we've seen that. I've just done a video on Liverpool versus Newcastle, and you saw how Anthony Gordon was fantastic in that position. But for Man United, especially when you've got someone like Wan-Bissaka who's kind of making those runs, but really, is the defence concerned about him from an attacking point of view? I know he has improved, but to have a winger here who can go to the byline as well, I think it makes it a lot harder for Forest in positions like you see in this screenshot. Because this is this is a clear amount of space. And also, if you can get yourself to the byline, that's a really dangerous thing that you want to happen. But bizarrely, if you look at the body language of the defender here, he's absolutely happy with allowing quite a lot of space there, really, and not even really getting totally across to try and get Antony at least away from the penalty box. But that's because of what Antony has done previously. But in this moment, he does exactly that. He drives to the byline, and that's obviously something that he's been working on. And you can see that from his heat map. It shows that he had a clear focus on mixing it up against Forest, and he looked a lot better for it. The end result of this was that he was able to generate space inside on his left because he was unpredictable. And after this screenshot, he actually gets off a really threatening shot towards goal. Antony made 4 key passes, 1 big chance, and took a total of 4 shots in the game. It was much, much better from Antony, who seems to be adapting. As an individual, we've got to talk about Bruno. He's so important to Manchester United, and I think we saw how important he is to this side in terms of being a out-and-out number 10, a proper number 10. By having him centrally, he was able to make those runs past Martial, and his influence in important areas was there to be seen. And getting him in that zone 14 area is always going to see the best of Bruno Fernandes. And actually, we've got a screenshot on that one as well. Let's get to it. So this is a great example of it because it shows that energy that he has, but having him in that number 10 position, let me just circle him. There he is. And Casemiro plays a lovely little pass over the top of the back line and over the top of Joe Worrell, I think it is in this one. And it's him kind of making that run, that really clever run, curled run. But if he's over here, that's just not going to happen. I think it's interesting to sort of play those long balls at times because that has been a problem, making their way through the thirds. But that was also down to the fact that Nottingham Forest played with such a low block. The screenshot is actually from Joe Worrell's red card, and this comes from Bruno making that run from deep, right down the centre, and Casemiro playing that ball in behind. Bruno had a great game. He made 3 key passes, created 2 big chances, and took 6 shots in the game. His levels are undoubtedly higher as that sole creator. Now, what that means for Mason Mount when he's fit again, obviously we're not sure yet, and he's not fit. But Bruno has to be the 10, it feels like. Or sort of, certainly at this level of Man United, they kind of need to be. So is that the solution that we've been talking about? Bruno as a number 10, happy days. Well, you're kind of regressing. And I think that's the problem here, is that in this game, it was actually about these 2 players once again. And it's just a little bit... It's a bit sort of individualistic. They lack those effective patterns of play still. And I think a big reason for that is that they still need that guy who's going to kind of totally run the game, that 100-touch man. Only one of their goals came from open play. And at home against Forest, this should be better. It may get better for Man United, but at the minute, they're still trying to figure themselves out. So no, they haven't solved it. Maybe next week. Forest were pretty good on the whole, and I thought they targeted Man United's weaknesses really nicely. The movement of their front 3 hurt Man United several times, and it shows that their front 3 is capable of doing damage against any opponent. I think you've got to give a special mention to Antony, by the way, who now becomes the first Forest player to score in 7 consecutive matches in the Premier League. What an interesting game Brighton versus West Ham was. 1.48 XG to 3.23 XG for West Ham. And get on the close-up of this one, have Brighton been exposed? Bloody maybe. Let's have a look at the average positions, shall we? Now, these average position maps are actually, like, literally, and I know maybe I sound like a loser here, but, like, they are hilarious. Let's look how high up Brighton are. Brighton lost this game 3-1. Look at that. Look how deep they are. It's amazing. Like, usually you'd expect the scoreline to be massively in favour of Brighton, given how advanced that they were throughout. But Moyes, he has absolutely schooled that spiky-haired Italian this time. That sounded bad. But he has got spiky hair, and he is Italian. Hats off to West Ham, because the tactical approach in defence, but also that sting in attack, it was perfectly executed. It's almost like the expectation towards West Ham has gone backwards, which is just completely played into their hands this season. You think with them being so deep that West Ham were sort of operating like a bit too close to their own goal. Wrong. This is exactly what David Moyes wanted, and he effectively said to Roberto De Zerbi, let's get it on, let's engage and let's see what you've got, because we think we can stop you by getting our bodies in the way. So here we've got an image from the game, and do you want to count them quickly? I'll do it for you. So West Ham have I'm going to give them that one, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 players in and around the box. Because by having so many players in and around the box, it made it impossible for any combinations once the ball arrived into the area. This meant that Brighton were forced to do one thing all game long, and that was sort of cut the ball back to a player outside the box who was kind of arriving, or where possible, again, in zone 14, which is dangerous. But when you've got 8 players in the way, it's going to make it very difficult, or they were going to have to recycle possession. Brighton's shot map shows exactly this. Pascal Gross had 5 shots, all of them from outside the box. He scored, of course, but that was kind of, always a possibility with the frequency of him having so many shots. So negating the box, shutting off the corridors was massive here. And when it came to attack, it was 2 factors for West Ham that saw them win: creating meaningful chances in behind and exploiting one specific area of Brighton's defence. West Ham created 6 big chances with only 22% possession, which has to be some sort of record. So look at this screenshot. Instead of clearing the danger, Adam Webster tries to play the ball back to Verbruggen. Well, you're bugging, Verbruggen, because this was a bad decision. Although, look, it's the style of play and the philosophy of which they play. I think, interestingly enough, again, what a great example of 2 screenshots here, right? That's Brighton West Ham, and that's Brighton West Ham. And, again, a perfect game for that man, Antonio. He will, Scamacca's not going to do that. He's going to stand here. And that's, there's nothing against him. Scamacca would be amazing at Brighton, but you're using Antonio's strengths. And so they looked to get at Webster, got him into sort of difficult areas, but because he is instructed to play, the size, the physicality, the desire, the work rate that Antonio provides, which often gets slept on, he makes a mistake, and that mistake leads to a goal. Antonio's heat map shows exactly how this transpired. When he was receiving the ball, he was clearly instructed to target the right-hand side of Brighton because of the space that James Milner, that young scamp, left. And it forced Webster to go into those uncomfortable positions in areas of the pitch. But the second focus that Antonio had was that he was always trying to get himself into the box in the latter stages. And that was actually the exact same for James Ward-Prowse, who, as you can see, look, the whole team, he's only just in front of the halfway line. I get it. But he was the closest to Antonio. And you can see here that he was looking to get himself into the box to make those late entries as well. And of course, he scored by doing so. Brighton got absolutely David Moyesed, and they know it. And that's why I love the Premier League. But what a performance from West Ham. They are starting to look like a really good transitional side. And there are shades of Moyes' first few seasons at the club. A shout out to Areola, of course, by the way. An absolute joke in this goal in terms of his goalkeeping. He prevented 0.95 goals and made 5 saves from inside the box. He's also 4 million on FPL and plays Luton next week. Though, of course, I'll probably bring him in, swap out Pickford, and Pickford will get a clean sheet. West Ham also still have Mohamed Kudus to add in too. Could be pretty scary for them. And actually West Ham is starting to look like it could be a fun season for them after last season's disappointment in the league, at least. As I said at the start, I think for Brighton there is that solution. I think we saw it last week. We spoke about it in the fallout, and it's in CISO. I think when you're going to play a game like this, people like Matoma and March, to a point, they have that width and they're going to look to try and dribble through a lot of players. And it's just going to be really, really difficult. So you need to be able to mix it up. And that's what West Ham did really well, because it's one of those ones where they were absolutely, delighted to see any kind of crosses go in, because they're happy to go up against Welbeck and Ferguson, who are two, good players in the air, obviously. But they'll rather take those chances than to leave those spaces in behind. So to maybe twist it up a little bit, get Welbeck out and bring in my boy Enciso. To have someone like Enciso, it's really interesting, the player profiles that they bring into the club, because although he's got quality, again, in that zone 14, that ability to maybe have the quality to get past all those players and score a goal, Enciso having another player in that area of the pitch, I think would have done them a hell of a lot of good, instead of someone like Welbeck, someone who's going to come out, take players out of the game. So that could be the solution. And again, is another reason why I think once Enciso's fit, he's going to have a massive, massive season for Brighton this year. Because a lot of teams are probably going to go up against Brighton and go, you're obviously going to have the ball, so let's make sure we defend that 18-yard box. The Cherries got popped 2-0 by Tottenham. The XG 0.67 to Bournemouth, 2.06 to Tottenham, who are not cooking, but they're simmering, and they're simmering hard. Now, is anyone still doubting Tottenham? Let me know in the comments down below, because there is one big reason as to why this result was so telling about Spurs' season. The season still to come, right? We all know that Bournemouth, under Iraola, are an intense pressing side. I spoke about that on the fallout last week. They don't have a handbrake. They are sin handbrake. And that is often the very thing that possession-based sides like Tottenham are going to struggle against. But this wasn't the case. And for a few reasons, it's why Tottenham are going to have an incredible season, I think, this year. The next few screenshots I'm going to show you, they show exactly how Tottenham were able to prevent Bournemouth's intense press. So this is a screenshot from the lead up to the Maddison goal. Now, Maddison is over here, okay? But what's so important here is subtle body language. Now, Basuma, let's zoom in on him, is right there. And he is facing Porro. And Porro's cutting back in, right? But Porro is obviously going to play the ball to Basuma. Everyone on that Tottenham side knows that, because Basuma's having close to 100 touches a game, if not more, right? More important than that, there's a parallel run from two players, Pape Sarr and Richarlison. And their movement is crucial here in terms of creating space for the team, because it's all about the team. So Basuma showing that body language, and that body language is kind of moving towards the Bournemouth goal. And that's really important, because what it's saying here is that he's not going to kind of protect the ball and go backwards. He's going to be positive. He's going to go forwards. And he does so with that first touch. And what you'll see now is that Pape Sarr and Richarlison have moved their defenders. So I think it's Lloyd Kelly in the background here. He's had to sort of drift a little bit wider. But Pape Sarr's movement is so clever, because he goes to the blind side of Philip Billing. So as you can see, if we zoom right in, you can see Philip Billing there, and Pape Sarr has made that movement behind him. And what's happened here is dragged two of those players across. So I know I've spoken about zone 14 a couple of times, but that's where a lot of goals come from. And that movement from Pape Sarr and Richarlison to move a couple of those players makes such a difference. Because if we go back, you can then see that Pape Sarr then can make that opposite movement, that second movement into that exact space that we were just talking about. So Basuma could drive himself if he wanted to, but he's also able to play that really, really simple pass to Pape Sarr in this area here. And if we move it along, you then see exactly what we're talking about. Let's move back one more time. Maddison, let's have a look at his body language. You can see it right there. His body language is crucial in this, because he knows exactly what is going on. The whole team knows exactly what's going on. This is high-level stuff. And as we alluded to at the start of the screenshot, the goal comes exactly from it. So that area of the pitch is available. Maddison is making that run. He gets the ball. He scores a bloody goal, doesn't he? It's really, really clever stuff. And it's about manipulative movements. And it's about Tottenham just being a really free-flowing team that is about the team. Exactly that. But it's positive. Tottenham created 2.06 XG versus Bournemouth, but also created 2.17 XA, which is the perfect insight into how this team creates valuable chances via a thought-through, intelligent approach based around a clear philosophy. And this is the reason that they were able to beat Bournemouth without many scares at all. And Tottenham are so comfortable on the ball that they have so many moving parts that pressing them in your own half is now almost a little bit suicidal, because they'll carve you open over and over again, especially if you go man for man like Bournemouth did here. Tottenham will also exploit that through sacrificial runs like we saw from Richarlison, and it creates space for others. Also, I want to talk about Destiny Udogie, who I thought was fantastic in this one. The talent he has is undeniable, but the tactical understanding that he has at the age of 20 I think is fantastic to see. Against Man United last week, he often took up inverted positions in the first phase of play. Whilst he did this at times against Bournemouth, he mostly stayed wide, and it worked brilliantly. And what I also like about him is his movement in the final third. He often came centrally in the final third, which is something that I haven't really picked up on from Spurs in their first couple of matches. With that Iraola style, the new right back for Bournemouth, Max Aarons looks to press Perisic, and Udogie, showing real sort of, smarts here, is able to manipulate the space, make that underlapping run into that space on the left, and the goal comes from exactly that. The one problem is that he went off injured, which is a huge, huge shame. Ben Davies came on in his place, and I bet Davis eyes up that spot for himself now with so much attacking freedom, which will be really, really fun to see. And we saw Ben Davies score last week, so although he wouldn't be your traditional FPL choice, why not? The way this team's playing, he could actually get some FPL returns. Bournemouth fans, do not worry. Please don't worry. The win will come. The player's been so good so far, and someone who I think will shine this season is Antoine Semenyo. I think he looks electric so far, and the combination work in attack is really, really promising. Bournemouth will beat someone by 3 goals by the end of October. You heard it here first. Don't put that wink in. Joe, you're going to have to put it in now. Now, I'm absolutely sure I've already recorded this, but for some reason, it doesn't seem to be anywhere. So let's talk about Everton versus Wolves. Now, the big question is, can Everton be fixed? Yet another disappointing result for Everton, but where does that blame lay? Now, even when you sort of atone for the Aston Villa match to simply being, outclassed by a better opponent, there isn't really an excuse now as to why Everton haven't got anything out of this match against Wolves or the game against Fulham. Everton had 15 shots within the match, and their shot map is a lot healthier than Wolves, with more shots inside the box, but also more on target. But I think generally, the patterns of play from Everton, the creative spark, it's not totally there, and they're not able to routinely create chances. Now, granted, they did create 5 big chances in this one, but these were coming from either hard work or set pieces, which again, I think you have to acknowledge that. You have to be happy with that, because that is the big thing for Everton. They have to work hard. They have to be disciplined. And so, chance creation has to come from hard work and set pieces, but they need that little bit of stardust as well. And also, actually, another thing, I'm kind of contradicting myself here, but Jose Sarr was a complete monster. He made 6 saves inside the box, and actually the only goalkeeper performance that could be mentioned in the same breath would be Leno, also against Everton, who made 8 saves inside the box. And of course, Alisson Becker 7 as well in the game against Newcastle. So there is an element of luck, but also not being able to create chances by following a specific plan from open play. I think that's got to be the biggest worry for Everton, and the fact that the opening fixtures were pretty kind for Everton. That's going to put pressure on those bigger games and for them to get points, which is a shame because they haven't played that bad. Crucially, they have just agreed to sign Beto from Udinese for 25 million. He's a 6'4" striker with pace and physicality, exactly what you need. So the play may be geared around him very soon. And of course, you've got a second option as opposed to Maupay, who no one really wants there. I don't think he probably even wants to be there anymore. And it's not that same pressure that's on Dominic Calvert-Lewin, and more importantly, his body. When it comes to Wolves, I thought their game plan was probably perfect in terms of relying on Everton being poor in front of goal and trying to pounce on the inevitable Everton mistakes that might arise. Check out this screenshot. You can see that Fabio Silva was clearly being told to gamble at every occasion, and it almost worked out here as he pounced on miscommunication between Tarkowski and Pickford. Actually should have finished his chance for the goal. I really want to praise Wolves, but again, it boils down to an Everton mistake. Tarkowski is so focused on giving instructions to Onana that he allows Kaladzic to drift behind him, and at 6'7", Kaladzic is the last person who you should be allowing to do this. Also, this was his first Wolves goal and their first shot on target, and it came in the 87th minute. Everton seemed to truly be a social experiment into how much a human can take. Silly mistakes, and that's disappointing. I think keep calm if you're an Everton fan, but I understand if a feeling of doom is somewhat foreboding, but the performances haven't been that bad. And much like this glass of water, I'm empty. I didn't have a wee.